Hi, welcome to the interview with Tim Dunn. I am Mike Hills, Bodger on the forum, and I'm joined today by Martin Skane, who you'll all know as Port Perrin, and of course our special guest, Tim Dunn, who's a railway historian, travel editor and TV presenter who has recently presented The Architecture the Railways Built. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Good. Our first question to you is, we would like to ask, what started your interest in all things railway related?
The thing that started my interest, I think, was probably my grandfather, who I only knew very briefly. My grandfather on my paternal side, he died when I was really quite small. He was a railway modeller, he was profligate. I mean, he dabbled in every possible scale imaginable. He did TT scale, he did 3.5 inch gauge, he did O gauge, he did OO gauge, he did all sorts of things. And when he died, he left me a whole load of railway books, of which I think there must be several hundred of them, and they form the bulk of my collection sitting here in London today. I'll just whiz around my camera. You can see a whole load of them. That's a whole chunk of them over there. There are far more in storage in Buckinghamshire as well. I think it's a couple of thousand in total these days. But he left me a couple of hundred railway books. And so I was brought up with these weekend after weekend, looking at these railway books. So I learned about the whole world through his railway books. And these big boxes of model railway things that were stuffed away in the garage that Granny said, go and amuse yourself with those things, aged of 6 or 7. I had bits of bogies and bits of wheels and different scales and different gauges. I was told to go and amuse yourself with those things and fit them all together. And so I sort of pieced the worlds together in my idea of mechanics and the world and geography and history and everything, just through this collection of stuff that was left for me, and try to make sense of the world through them. And I think as the years went by, I went by my father, who also worked for British Rail briefly as a surveyor in their property team, looking at railway buildings, so took me out and about at stations. So pretty much every weekend of my life was something railway oriented. So I was sort of stuck with this railway world all around me, which is why I'm so weird now. I've got no chance of escaping this damned world of rail.
So did you have the Ian Allen ABC that the rest of us had?
Well, the thing is, I did actually. In fact, I've got one down. I think the last one I've got is I've got a couple of ones of the steam era ones that both my father had. There was things his underlined, the ones where he'd seen everything, and notes of where he'd seen them as well. I've got some of those from the 60s, but on my bookcase in front of me here, I haven't got any of my ones, but I've got one I think from about 1988, 89, the stockbook ones, where they really quite, some really big thick ones. They're sort of white, white ends to them, which are kind of got a sort of big, large locomotives in them, and full of EMUs and DMUs as well. And I even had coaches in there as well, from memory. Yeah, I had some of those. In fact, actually, I went down to the Ian Allen shop closure. Gosh, what, last year is it now? To the end of lockdown last year, because I don't live too far away from Waterloo, and it was my local model shop. It was just a short, sort of 15-minute walk across to Waterloo from where I live. So I spent a fortune in there. Unfortunately, it wasn't quite a fortune enough, and they sadly closed down last year. But yeah, I'm very familiar with the ABCs.
Did you stand or sit on the platform ends?
No, never allowed to do that. I think Dad took me down to Paddington a couple of times to look at the 125s, and so my local station back when I was a kid was Gerrard's Cross. And what was interesting about Gerrard's Cross was we didn't necessarily get interesting stock through there very often. It was just DMUs. It was the class 115 or 117s, I think they were, from the Chiltern lines. It was. What was exciting though was we used to get steam specials, and the Great British Rail ran for several years these wonderful Santa specials and steam specials almost every weekend at times. through Gerrard's Cross. And so you get Sir Lamiel, you get Sir Gresley, you get a Flying Scotsman, you get, Duchess of Hamilton coming through, King George, and they'd be steaming through, and they'd stop at Gerrard's Cross. So as a small child, age 8 or 9, and back in the 1980s, I was being brought up on this weird mainline railway where we still had express mainline trains steaming through and stopping at my local station. So I was a very fortunate child in my upbringing with the world of railways. It was quite different to most, I suppose. And that certainly had an effect on me. And then being taken away for holidays and so on at Festiniog, Ronhide and Dymchurch, my father made sure that all of our weekends, by some bizarre coincidence, no matter where the holiday house or hotel was, seemed to always go past a steam railway, somewhere nearby, much to my mother's eternal eye rolling. And my partner now deals with that as well. So I think pretty much every weekend we've ever had away, the past 5 years, or week away, has always magically ended up just happening to go past some sort of railway object or piece of architecture.
Wrong with that? Nothing wrong. And do you still go out to see trains now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very lucky. I live very close to London Bridge Station, so stuff often comes through there, and think anything from like this Network Rail. Occasionally, I've got friends who work at Network Rail and said, "Oh, come and we're bringing one of the yellow trains through. Do you want to pop up to us and wave at us on the platform? We'll come and say hello." Check out. I've been up to London Bridge, just seen that. But yeah, I mean, like this weekend just gone. We're down. I was going to look at some narrow gauge stuff, so we're down at Amberley Museum in Sussex. Have a look at that. But yeah, I mean, again, it's always worth look at something fun on the railways because often it's just interesting. Seeing something interesting or different. Why is that there? Why has that been brought out? Why is that happening? It's always good to see something interesting, isn't it? Or an interesting mechanical piece of engineering. It's always fun to go and see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I live down near Truro, and we don't get much variety down here. But last weekend we had the Blue Pullman, or the fake Blue Pullman, as I called it, and it looked magnificent.
It does, doesn't it? I've still not seen it. I was supposed to be there on the first trip, and I couldn't make it, unfortunately. In the end, just too much work going on at the same time. But I think that kind of thing is there to be celebrated, and I think we're entering a very interesting point in Britain's railways, of course, where everything has changed. Everything has changed. Everything we thought we knew 5 years ago is now up in the air. But one of the things that we think is certain is there is a future for an interesting cross section of leisure services, and so I'm intrigued to see what kind of charter services perhaps come onto the market and appear satisfying new types of customer and new ways of satisfying customer demand. I think the Blue Pullman is one of those. I think that is probably going to be at the forefront of different kind of services. So I'm expecting far more HST type conversions or private sets to be doing interesting things over the next 10 years.
Anyway, we'll take a break after about 15 minutes. But my last question for this first half then is, you've obviously got this interest in railways, but what got you into TV?
It was my own fault. Because I'm a bit gobby, really. When I was at university, I ran the radio station because I liked the idea of lots of my friends and I being able to talk an awful lot and have fun and bring people in, talk about stuff that we loved or play music that we loved and tell people why we love this stuff, right? And so it's a privilege to have an audience on things. But it's fun to tell a story, and it's fun to be enthusiastic about stuff and say, hey, listen to this bit of music, or listen to this story, listen to this thing. I love it, and I think you should love it too. And that kind of led on to doing stuff with journalism after university and doing public relations. And then I've done a bit of radio. I've done a bit of interviews about radio, about television, about railway things rather. And I trained people. I had clients who wanted to be on television and so on, and I trained them, but I hadn't done much of it myself. And then I heard about this project on BBC 4 called Train Spotting Live, and this is about 5 years ago.
I remember it, yes.
About train spotting, and I thought, oh dear. Now, is this going to be something that is going to be done by some celebrities and you know, not know much about it? Will it be the usual kind of thing? Well, I was like, look, I've been train spotting. I know my stuff. I can do this honestly. You know, I class myself as a historian. Now I'm a historian because I've done an awful lot about railways. I've written and researched an awful lot about railways and narrow gauge railway history and miniature railway stuff. And I spent 1.5 years of my life curating exhibitions on railways and museums. I thought, right, okay, I can do that. Let's go and talk to them about this stuff. So I wrote to them saying, can I come in and talk to you? I've got some ideas of things you can go and look at that are not the normal type of train spotting. And so I went into this meeting with a production company, and after about 1.5 hours, I'd realised the meeting that I'd been in had gone from me and 2 producers, without really noticing, to being me, 2 producers, 6 researchers, and actually there were 15 of us in the room. And I hadn't really noticed. And it all been happening. I was quite annoyed because I was sitting there and they'd been on their phones for the entire time, thinking, why are they not listening to me? Turns out they were texting people across the business saying, come down to this room, you need to go and meet this odd bloke. And so I'd kind of stopped and went, oh, well, I've just given you all a lecture on railway history. I've just realised, and interesting railways. As I was, you know, so I said, look, I've got to go back to work now. That was my lunch break. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I got to my lunch up in Camden Town. I said, I need to go now, really. They're like, okay, thanks very much. And as I was walking out, my phone rang, and it was the head of the production unit. He said, look, you know, you came in and said you got some ideas. I said, yeah. He said, we're all back in the office. We're just talking now. He said, do you just want to come and help present this programme? So I said, yeah, okay, fine, yeah, whatever. He was like, it's going to be live, it's in 3 weeks' time, can you do that? I was like, yeah, fine, whatever. And so in 3 weeks' time, I found myself by the side of the West Highland line off to Mallaig, waiting for a Black 5. Oh, no, it wasn't a Black 5, was it? It was the B1, I think it was. It was Mayflower, I think it was. Waiting for it to come past, late. Which was late by 5 minutes, and having to fill 6 minutes of BBC time talking about why steam engines are interesting for 6 minutes on live television, which was no great problem for me. And after that, I thought, well, if I can do that, I'll just talk about trains more and railways more. And I've ended up being a talking head for various things on different productions for television productions from China to Canada. And it's funny when you talk to someone, they say, oh, a producer. They'll say, oh, Tim, we've heard you're a historian. What railway history can you talk about? And I say, well, actually, my specialism really is actually leisure railways and the use of railways sort of towards empowering tourism in the late Victorian era and early Edwardian era. And I said, great, cool. Can you talk as well about Stephenson's rocket and early locomotives? And I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, just give me a little while, and I'll read up a little bit more about it and some of the things you want to talk about. And then they're like, can you talk to us about the narrow gauge railway network of North Sweden? And you're like, well, yeah, but I'll just give me a little time to research it. Like, okay, fine. And they say, oh, can you talk to us about the railways of Southern Australia for a bit? And you go, okay, fine. So as well. So I end up researching an awful lot as part of that stuff as my sort of my spare time job. And I get to interview a lot of people in order so that I can research that stuff and learn from a lot of other academics who specialise in these things to try and build stories on what they do and communicate their work and take it to a wide audience. So yeah, you end up learning an awful lot about huge amounts of railways across the world and of great historical spread and topic and themes and social interaction that I never thought I'd get the chance to do, but it really is great fun and a wonderful way to explain the things that perhaps you Mike and you Martin and all those watching have a specialist interest in, and how we take that and give it a wider context is a real joy.
That's absolutely fascinating. We're going to take a short break here, and when we come back, we'll continue with Mike, I think.